May 3rd, 2026, a Sunday. The trail from the village of Gorak, Shep, to Everest Base Camp. Elevation, 5,200 meters above sea level. Local time, just past noon. At this hour, the Khumbu Valley usually catches a steady wind from below, and the sun warms the rocks. The trail here runs across a moraine. It's a field of stone left behind by the Khumbu Glacier, gray, flat, with boulders the size of a person. No vertical walls, no drop-offs, no steep sections. Every spring, thousands of trekkers walk this path with no climbing experience whatsoever. Just walking with poles and a backpack, 3 kilometers from Gorak, Shep, to the tent city at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, a man is moving up that trail, a high-altitude guide with 30 Himalayan expeditions on his record. He has walked this route so many times, he stopped counting long ago. Right now, he is heading up to base camp to begin his 31st expedition season. Somewhere between Gorak, Shep, and base camp, at 5,200 meters, he loses consciousness. He will not reach base camp. This is the first death on Everest in the 2026 season, not on the summit, not in the death zone, not in the Khumbu Icefall, not on the steep faces of Lhasa, below base camp, at a point where, technically, the climb has not even begun. The summit window is still more than 2 weeks away. No one is climbing yet. Teams are acclimatizing, setting up their camps. That same day, a helicopter carries out an evacuation to Lukla. Other guides will pass over that same stretch of moraine in the evening. And with them, clients no different from the ones he had been leading for 25 years. The dead man's name is Lakpa Dende Sherpa. The English language press transliterates the Nepali name in different ways. Some sources write it as Lakpa Tendi. They are referring to the same person. He was 51 or 52 years old. Sources differ by a year. He was from the village of Gudel in the Khumbu district. Many of the Sherpas working on Everest come from this part of Nepal. Gudel itself is a mountain village at around 2,000 meters, several days on foot from Lukla. Climbing here is a family trade, passed down generation after generation. Lakpa Dende started going on Himalayan expeditions in 2001. By the time of his death, he had 30 seasons behind him. He stood on the summit of Everest in 2017, on Manaslu in 2016. He climbed Makalu 7 times, a high number even by the standards of high-altitude guides. He worked with 7 summit treks for more than 10 years. It is a Nepali operator, one of the largest on Everest. They take the Indian Army, Chinese groups, and private clients from Europe and America to the mountain. 7 Summit Trek's high-altitude guides are not porters or support staff. They lead clients from base camp all the way to the summit. In the 2026 season, Lakpa Dende was walking up to base camp for his 31st season, not as a client, not as a tourist, as a guide, the kind who is responsible for other people's lives above 8,000 meters. After his death, the head of 7 Summit Treks, Taneshwar Guragai, said one line to Outside Online, quote, "Lakpa Dende was part of our family. He worked with us for more than 10 years. As of May 7th, the company had made no other public statements. A guide with 30 expeditions behind him dies on a section of trail that untrained trekkers walk every day. A path with no drop-offs, no sharp turns, no objective hazards. What happened between Gorak, Shep, and base camp is the central open question in this story. The first version comes from the company itself. Through Outside Online, 7 Summit Treks reports that Lakpa Dende lost consciousness on the trail. Sources inside the company tell reporters the cause appears to be natural. Behind that wording usually sits a heart event, a stroke, or some other internal condition. Without an autopsy, there is no precise diagnosis. Neither a fall nor a traumatic injury is mentioned in the company's account. The second version comes from Explorer's Web. The publication describes what happened in a single phrase: a fatal fall at 5,200 meters above Gorak, Shep, shortly before base camp. In the same article, the author adds that on this section, the trail runs over a moraine with no exposed drops. And one more line, she has no further detail on how exactly he fell. To fall from a height, you need a height. A moraine is a gentle field of stones. The physical conditions for a fatal fall simply aren't there. A guide could slip on a rock or drop between boulders, but in the worst case, that's an injury that's usually compatible with a rescue operation. Nepal police opened an investigation. The evacuation was carried out by helicopter to Lukla the same day. As of May 7, 2026, the date through which all public material has been gathered, there is no conclusion about the cause of death, no autopsy, no official statement from the police. What exactly happened to Lakpa Dende between Gorak, Shep, and base camp is not on the public record, possibly his heart, possibly something tied to acclimatization. What is known as this: a 31st season was cut short on a stretch of moraine that trekkers walk on foot. The explanation for why he was walking up there is not in his biography. It's in one pair of numbers, known to anyone from Gudel. A Sherpa guide's seasonal earnings in 2026 run from $5,000 to $10,000 for the 2 spring months. The average annual income in Nepal is about $1,500. In other words, a single spring season pays several times more than the country's median yearly wage. That's the first half of the pair. Now the second, age works against you at altitude. According to the Himalayan database, the overall accident rate for climbers on Everest is around 1%. For those over 60, that figure is 4.5 times higher, 4.1%, against 0.9% for those who are younger. The age threshold for risk has been shifting upward as support systems and oxygen have improved, but the basic rule has not changed. The older you are, the harder it gets. In January 2025, the Nepali government raised the insurance payouts for mountain workers. From that point on, when a Sherpa is killed on the job, his family receives $14,400 in life insurance and $37,500 for repatriation. That's an increase compared to the rules before 2014, when the policy was $10,000 and did not cover evacuation. All of this is well known. Every Sherpa heading into the season knows the compensation figures, the age statistics, and his own odds of coming home. None of it is hidden. It is simply the market. Lakpa Dende was stepping into that market for the 31st time. He was walking up because in Gudel, there is no other way to earn that kind of money in 2 months. And in his early 50s, he went anyway. In that same week, 2 more men slip out of public view in the Himalayas. Less is said about them than about Lakpa Dende. One because almost nothing is written about him. The other because Makalu is not Everest, and events on neighboring 8,000ers fall off the news cycle quickly. The first is named Pramesh Rai, 18 years old, a Nepali citizen. According to the only public mention of his background, he was working with a group of trekkers on Mera Peak, a 6,000er in the Khumbu, a popular target for commercial climbs. Around April 30th, 2026, he escorted a group up the mountain and never came home. The name of the operator, the makeup of the group, the descent route, the outcome of the search and rescue operation. None of this is in the public record. The only mention of Pramesh Rai is the final paragraph of one Explorer's Web article from May 5th. No other publications in either the Nepali or international press had appeared as of May 7th. An 18-year-old trekking group worker disappears in the Khumbu and remains a single paragraph. The second is named David Roubínek, 38 years old, from the Czech Republic. 20 kilometers from Everest, on the neighboring 8,000er Makalu, he is part of a Czech-Slovak team of 7, climbing in alpine style, without commercial guides, without high-altitude Sherpa support. On May 4th, one day after Lakpa Dende's death, the team starts its summit push. Roubínek climbs to Camp 3 at around 7,400 meters. There, he begins to show signs of altitude sickness. The only treatment in such a case is loss of altitude, and it has to happen immediately. 3 teammates abandon the summit attempt and start down with him. They do not make it in time. David Roubínek dies at 7,200 meters, about 200 vertical meters short of Camp 2. As of May 5th, the evacuation is still ongoing. By May 7th, the team has returned to base camp without reaching either of its 2 objectives, neither Makalu itself nor its sister, Peak Makalu II. A day after Roubínek's death, the Khumbu Icefall delivers its own answer to the question of what this season is worth. May 5th, 2026, 5:45 in the morning, local time. Above the Khumbu Glacier, the sky is just beginning to lighten. By this hour, most groups have already been in the icefall for hours. Sherpas leave between 2 and 3 in the morning to get through it before the sun warms the ice. In the early hours, the ice still holds the cold of the night and behaves more predictably. A group of climbers is moving up on its first acclimatization rotation. The route runs from base camp to Camp 2. For experienced teams, the icefall takes from 3 to 6 hours. The group is almost through it. They have cleared the lower sections and are approaching the exit onto the upper plateau. In front of them lies the last serious obstacle, ladders across a wide crevasse. Beyond that, Camp 1 is not far. A few meters below the ladder section, a block of ice collapses. Pieces of ice fall onto the trail, directly into the group's path. Several people are caught in the slide. 2 of them are seriously injured. From the moment of the collapse, the standard Khumbu evacuation procedure begins. 30 minutes after the event, helicopters lift off from Lukla, the village in the valley, the nearest air base to Everest, 64 kilometers from base camp. By 6:30 in the morning, the first machine is on the scene. The injured are loaded in, and the helicopter heads straight for Kathmandu. By around 7:15 they are in the air, on their way to the capital. From Everest to Kathmandu is roughly 140 kilometers in a straight line. The hospital is Hams in Kathmandu, a private clinic with a round-the-clock emergency department where injured climbers from Nepal's mountains regularly arrive. From the avalanche in the icefall to a hospital bed, about 2 hours. At Hams, there is a man whose record is almost indistinguishable from Lakpa Dende's, the same operator, the same top tier of guides. In 48 hours, 7 summit treks loses 1 such man and nearly loses a second. The man caught in the May 5th collapse was Khumbu Icefall Sherpa, 44 years old, from the Sankuwasaba district, an eastern high mountain region of Nepal that borders the Khumbu. Some sources spell his name Pema Tenduk, others Pemba Tenduk. Transliterations from Nepali vary. He has worked as a high-altitude guide since 2011. At the time of the collapse, he was with 7 summit treks. In 14 years, 34 successful 8,000er summits, 12 times on the top of Everest. These figures come from outside online, and no publication disputes them. In Nepal's guiding community, Pemba Tenduk is known by the nickname Black Yak. A client was caught in the same group, a 40-year-old Indian, Nimish Kumar Singh, who was on his way up Everest with Pioneer Adventure. There are almost no biographical details about him in the open record. No city, no profession, no previous climbing experience. Accounts of the severity of the injuries differ across publications. Pioneer Adventure, through its executive director, Nivesh Karki, calls what happened a minor avalanche. The Kathmandu Post, in its May 6th edition, calls it something else, serious injuries. Nepal's Department of Tourism, through its director Nisha Thapa Raut, puts it neutrally. Condition stable, no threat to life. Sources inside 7 summit treks, through outside online, say Pemba Tenduk is expected to be released within a day. As of May 7, 2026, there is no public confirmation that either Pemba Tenduk or Nimish Kumar Singh has been discharged from Hams. 7 Summit Treks has also not issued a detailed press release on the circumstances of the collapse. In 48 hours, the operator that takes large international groups up Everest loses 1 frontline guide and keeps a second one in the hospital. To understand what came down on Pemba Tenduk and the Indian client, you need to know what every climber on the Nepali side of Everest passes through. The Khumbu Icefall is a 4-kilometer stretch of ice between base camp at 5,364 meters and Camp 1 at 6,065. The vertical gain is about 700 meters. In a straight line, the distance is short, but clients spend 6 to 10 hours on this part of the route, and Sherpas underload 5 to 7. This is not an ordinary glacier. Here the ice tears off the slope of Everest into the western Siwezhiam. The Khumbu Glacier turns at this point and moves at roughly a meter a day. That movement can be heard. Sometimes it can be seen. If you are at the right point in base camp with a decent pair of binoculars, the ice creaks, cracks, and from time to time breaks off in large pieces. Out of that movement grow seracs, towers of ice as tall as multi-story buildings, which jut out over the trail in various parts of the icefall. Seracs split and fall without warning, not at any specific time, not on any signal. They go whenever the weight of the ice mass overcomes the grip on its base. That is why Sherpas and clients move through the icefall in the coldest hours of the day, between 3 and 8 in the morning, while the sun has not yet warmed the ice and the towers are at least relatively stable. Between the seracs run crevasses. Some are bridged with aluminum ladders, lashed together into a single long structure. The ladders are tied to fixed points. Underneath them is a void hundreds of meters deep. Some crevasses take a single ladder. Others take 2, 3, or 4 lashed together. Each season, a special team lays out the route through the icefall from scratch. They are called the Icefall Doctors. In 2026, the team has 8 men. The lead is Ang Sarki Sherpa, a veteran of this work since 2008. The foreman is Dawa Jangbu Sherpa. Every spring, they find a fresh path through the moving ice, fix ropes, set the ladders, mark the safe zones with flags. And every following spring, they do it all again, because last year's route no longer exists. In the spring of 2026, the Icefall Doctors ran into something they had not seen in a long time. On March 16th, they began work after the puja, a Buddhist ceremony in base camp that opens the season every spring. It is held at a stone altar in the middle of the tent city. After the puja, the team moves into the icefall and lays out the route from the lower sections to the upper ones. By early April, most of the path had been marked. On April 8th, the crew reached the final point where the route was supposed to break out toward Camp 1 and stopped. They could not go any further. The way was blocked by a hanging serac under the western shoulder of Everest, a block of ice 55 meters long, 37 meters wide, 28 meters high. In rough terms, like a 9-story building lying on its side. It hangs on the slope above the upper part of the icefall, directly over the section where the route runs up to Camp 1. Its body is shot through with multiple cracks. Any collapse means an avalanche straight onto the trail. On April 25th, the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, the body responsible for the icefall, carried out a helicopter inspection. The next day, on the 26th, a ground reconnaissance was performed. Both confirmed serious risk. An alternative route was attempted through the center of the section, but no alternative existed. Any detour passes through the strike zone of the serac. On April 28th, at 4 in the afternoon, the route was opened, beneath the hanging block. The delay from the point of blockage was 19 days. In its notice to base camp operators, the SPCC stated it directly. The route carries significant risk because of the serac. Safety measures were introduced together with the opening. Fast passage through the section without stopping, restrictions on Sherpa loads, and a separate rule for the ladders themselves. 1 person on the ladder at a time. Not 2, not 3. 1. By a separate one-time decision, Nepal's Department of Tourism allowed helicopter freight runs as far as Camp 2 at 6,400 meters. Until then, helicopters were permitted above base camp only on rescue operations. Cargo went on Sherpa's legs and shoulders. For the 2026 season, that rule was suspended for 1 year. The reason given by the Department of Tourism to speed up parallel rope fixing on the upper sections and cut total working time under the serac. The main thing about the May 5th collapse, what they had been afraid of, did not fall that day. On the morning of May 5th, the hanging block under the western shoulder is still in place. The avalanche that hit Pemba Tenduk's group came from a different, smaller ice formation. It broke off a few meters from the trail, just below the ladder section. Where exactly, sources do not specify. The main block, the one for which the route opening was delayed by 19 days, has partially calved during the monitoring period, but the bulk of its mass is still hanging there. Alan Arnett, one of the leading chroniclers of Everest, posts a piece on May 5th with a direct headline, 2 injured on the icefall. The serac is still there. The numbers behind that headline are heavy. The Khumbu Icefall is the most dangerous section of Everest's south side. According to the Himalayan database, 19% of all accidents on the route, 44 out of 225, happen on these 4 kilometers between base camp and Camp 1. The most well-known of those incidents is April 18, 2014. On that day, 16 Sherpas died in a single collapse. They were carrying loads to the upper camps at around 6:30 in the morning when a serac came down on their group. 13 bodies were recovered. 3 were never found. After that, the 2014 season was closed. On April 12, 2023, a similar event repeated itself on a smaller scale. 3 Sherpas of an Imagine Nepal team died in a serac collapse below Camp 1. Evacuation was impossible. They were too deep beneath the ice debris. The 2024 and 2025 seasons passed without fatalities in the icefall itself. The block that is hanging now is covered in multiple cracks. Experts had warned the serac could come down at any moment, anywhere from a few days to several weeks. The forecast did not hold. The serac did not fall. The icefall doctors found no alternative route. They opened the passage under the block, introduced the one-person-on-the-ladder rule, allowed helicopters as far as Camp 2, and the season got underway. The main threat hangs over the trail. When it lets go, no one will venture to predict at this point. Over the next 3 weeks, 464 people are due to pass under that block. That is how many Everest permits Nepal issued for the 2026 season, the third highest in history. Only 2023, 479, and 2025, 456, were higher. 47 expedition teams, clients from 55 countries, people from every corner of the world who have paid their operator anywhere from $45,000 to $100,000 and intend to stand on the summit in the final 10 days of May. The country breakdown looks like this: 100 from China, 67 from the United States, 58 from India, 32 from the United Kingdom, 18 from Russia, 14 from Australia, the rest in small groups from other countries. China leads for a simple reason. Their climbers are coming to Nepal because the north side of Everest is closed to them this season. On September 1st, 2025, the Nepali government raised the royalty fee for a permit on the standard south side route from $11,000 to $15,000. That is a 36% increase in one step. 2026 is the first full season under the new rate. Nepal's total permit revenue from Everest this spring is around $7.3 million, a record in the mountain's history. The Tibetan side of Everest is closed for the 2026 season. The decision was made by the Chinese authorities. Beijing has issued no official explanation. The flow of clients that used to go through the north route, without the Khumbu Icefall on the way to the summit, has been redirected to the south side in full. 3 neighboring 8,000ers are open this same season. Lhotse has 111 permits. Makalu has 62. Kanchenjunga has 36. The routes on Lhotse and Everest share the same line through the Khumbu Icefall, as far as Camp 2. That means it is not just the 464 Everest clients who will pass under the hanging serac, but most of the Lhotse team as well, plus the Sherpas servicing all of them. Each of the 464 clients heading for the summit will pass through these 4 kilometers at least twice on the way up and twice on the way down. Once for acclimatization rotations, once for the summit push. Sherpas, who haul loads to the upper camps, go through the icefall 3 to 4 times more often than that. Across the spring of 2026, that adds up to more than 1,000 round-trip passages under the hanging serac. Counting guides and porters across all the 8,000ers of the Khumbu, around 2,000. Here is what the first person up there will see, walking out at 3 in the morning on one of the coming nights. In the sky, stars. On the feet, crampons. In the hands, a jumar. On the head, a lamp. The light cuts 20 meters into the darkness, beyond which there is a gray ice wall and the occasional rope marker left behind by the icefall doctors. The sounds, your own breathing, the scrape of crampons on ice, the crunch of snow. Now and then, a distant crack from the upper plateaus, which you don't recognize the first time and learn to recognize later. It is the ice still moving, even at night. In the upper part of the icefall, just before the exit toward Camp 1, comes the ladder section over the wide crevasses. In one place, a single ladder. In another, 2. In another, 4 lashed together. Beneath them, a void hundreds of meters deep. The rule introduced when the route was opened still applies. 1 person on the ladder at a time, not 2, not 3. Until the first one is across, the next one waits. Past the ladders comes a short stretch up to Camp 1. The same stretch where, at 5:45 on the morning of May 5th, Pemba Tenduk and the 40-year-old Indian were lying. A few dozen meters above that section hangs the block. 28 meters tall, multiple cracks across its body. As of the date this material was gathered, May 7th, there has been no movement at all. There is no prediction for when the final collapse will come. It just hangs there. And every person going up and every person coming down walks underneath it. Over a single week in May 2026, the Himalayas register the following: 2 dead, Lakpa Dende on the trail below Everest Base Camp, and David Roubínek on the descent from Camp 3 on Makalu II. One missing, 18-year-old Pramesh Rai near Mera Peak. Two seriously injured in the Khumbu Icefall, Khumbu Dende Sherpa and Nimish Kumar Singh. There were no summit pushes on Everest during this week. The season has not begun in the full sense of the word. Everything that happened on the approaches, during acclimatization, during the laying of the route. There are still at least 10 days before the real climbs begin. Nepal police are continuing to investigate the circumstances of Lakpa Dende's death. As of May 7th, there is no conclusion about why a guide with 30 expeditions behind him collapsed on the trail. According to the meteorologist's forecast, the window for the rope-fixing team opens on May 8th and closes on the 12th. In those 4 days, the Sherpas will work their way from Camp 3 across the Lhotse face and the South Col to the summit and lay the ropes on the final stretch of the route. The first client summit window, by the official forecast of Nepal's Department of Tourism, runs from May 18th through the 22nd. All commercial groups will pile into that single week. 10 days from now, 464 people will move upward beneath the hanging serac.